Hey guys, it's Alex Chamberlain and I'm here for another high quality content, low budget iPhone video. So I just finished a week-long enduro race. It's called the Trans BC. It's kind of nicknamed the hardest week-long enduro race in the world. And yeah, it takes a bunch of abuse on the body and the bike. So I wanted to let you guys know like kind of what I chose for the race and why I chose it and how it performed. So let's start out. I did a Maxxis downhole casings, front and rear. I did the Minion DHR2 and I did the Assegai. I was going to do dual Assegais, but it rolls pretty slow in the rear, which isn't that big of a deal, but it's almost too grippy where, I don't know, I'm one of those guys who prefers like the aggressor rear tire, so have it like slide around a little bit, it'll be a little more playful. So that's why I went with the DHR2 for the week. So this is the wear after a week. Jack sheaf on the front is pretty much not bad at all. Like, I'm still gonna rock this for another month, 2 months, we'll see. And then on the rear, we did not fare so good. So we have some chunking of knobs. Then we have like this slice. Cannot believe it actually almost took my entire knob off. How did that not flat my tire? I don't know, but that's why you choose to run downhole casings. You're going to do a week-long event, descend 40,000 feet of some of the gnarlier trails out there. So you might as well run the downhole casings. It's really not much of a weight difference than the double downs. If you're running Exos, there's a lot of people running Exos and Exo Plus casings at the race. And every single one that I knew of got a flat. So might as well stay safe with the downhole casings. There are no cush cores. And then I ran aluminum wheels. I saw a few cracked carbon wheels out there, but these things held strong and true. Another thing I'd like to mention is this is the first year I've actually had 12 speed. In the past, I've usually run 11 speed, whether it be a 32 tooth chainring, 34 tooth chainring, and then the 10 to 42 cassette. So I can pedal up like a 34 chainring with a 11 speed cassette, but just because you can make it up the hill doesn't mean it's the most efficient option. So having a 32 in the front and the 1051 12 speed in the back was super helpful. I never needed easier, that's for sure, but it made it so I could more relax up some of the climbs. I didn't have to grunt at all, so stayed a lot fresher for the actual downhill stages. And then this year ran 200 mil rotors or 203 mil rotors front and rear. They got like the Frieza stuff or Ice Tech, whatever. The fins, which I actually believe work. Obviously, I don't think the pad fins work that well and they rattle, but I've been super impressed with these. I never really have too bad of brake fade or squealing or howling. They just kind of do the job. But I will say I did run Galfer Pro compound pads and I was super happy with them. I usually run Trucker Co pads just because they're super cheap, but the Galfers are cheap, or Galfer are cheap as well. And I was super impressed with the performance. They didn't make any noise, they didn't fade. They worked really well. But I will say, I'm a heavier rider, like around 205 pounds. I do have 203 4-piston XTR brakes, so that's a lot of power. But Galfer came out with a 223 rotor and a 423, a 223 rotor and also a 243. It might be a 246 rotor. Basically, they made some massive rotors that you can put on these bikes. And I really want to try the 223 front rotor. Just because the XTRs, they actually have a different cam. And I think the new XTs, like all the new style brakes that look like this, have a new cam in here that doesn't really change the power. Like this has the same kind of max power output as a Saint, but it's just how it's applied, the bite is not as good. So I figure if you have a bigger rotor, you'll have a lot more leverage on the wheel, and that might bring that kind of like bite feel back. Because I actually love the XTR feel in the rear, but I want a little bit more power out of the front or more bite. And that's just coming from like 80% of your braking typically is coming from the front brake. So if you have the same braking power front and rear, like obviously you're using your front brake more. So I'd like to try the 223 mil rotor in the future. But I was super satisfied with how my bike held up this week, and there's nothing really I would change. I actually didn't even have one mechanical the entire week. The only thing I did every other day was I did a small top bleed. If you guys are familiar with Shimano's, you can just put a cup of fluid, put it on the top, and just bleed out some of the bubbles. Obviously, if you're descending 40,000 feet in a week, you're in the steep stuff, you're overheating your brakes, you're boiling the fluid, and sometimes to get the lever, just the rear brake lever to feel good, you have to do some brake bleeding every so often. But that's really the only maintenance I did other than lubing the chain. But yeah, I was very satisfied with the bike, and honestly, I'd probably rock the exact same setup next year, depending on where I work, what bike I'm riding. But the Mega Tower did great. Starting to come up with one complaint, which is the seat tube angle. It's still slack. Effective is 76, but you can tell how high I run my seat. So the actual seat tube angle is like 69 degrees. So when you're a little bit taller like I am, that means the effective seat angle actually droops way back. So I'm probably, this is just throwing a number out, I didn't measure it, but I'm probably at like a 74 actual effective seat tube angle, or whatever you want to call it. So the seat tube angle is still a little slack, but for those shorter riders who aren't running so much post, I don't think you'll have a problem, and the seat tube angle is plenty steep enough, I would imagine. But other than that, this bike ate everything up. It gave me a lot of confidence, and it brought me to a top 20 result, which I was pretty happy with, to be honest. So yeah, that's the bike. And if you guys have any questions or any questions about the race that you want to know, definitely ask them in the comment section and I'll get back to you guys. But this is just an example of my pretty much bulletproof setup for week-long enduro racing, and I can't think of much I would change at all. Maybe one day I'll try a coil shock on a bike again, but other than that, no complaints. This bike's phenomenal. And if you haven't raced the Trans VC and you're kind of an aggressive rider who likes like gnarly terrain, I would definitely recommend it. It's probably the most fun time you'll ever have on your bike. That was my 3rd Trans VC and my 5th trans race, and I could say that Trans VC is just the most fun, most put together race I've ever seen. So yeah, I'll probably post a little more content in the near future, but until then, I'll see you guys out in the trails. Cheers.